I see you, Evie.
I had prayed for 15 years to have another child. I was given this referral to see a fertility doctor, and I agreed to do the artificial insemination, and that we knew that it would be an anonymous donor that would be used.
I took 23andMe. I had no idea what I was about to stumble upon when those results came in.
Cases of doctor daddies where fertility docs use their own sperm to impregnate patients.
Her biological father was actually her mom's fertility doctor.
It didn't make sense. Like, how is that possible?
The man that delivered me was my biological father.
These cases are really coming to the surface now. With the popularity of genetic testing,
we're not the only ones in this. I mean, there are hundreds of moms and children, maybe thousands in this country.
The number one question is why he would do any of this.
They are now creating life when God couldn't do it naturally. What does that do to a man's ego, the sense of power that that gives them?
So is it Aunt Maia?
My name is Eve Wiley, and I live in Dallas, Texas, and I'm the product of fertility fraud. Most of my life, when you look at pictures of my sister and my mother and people in my family, I didn't really look like them. When I was 16 years old, I was going through my mom's emails. She had been communicating with the cryobank. At first, I thought, what is my mom doing with my grandpa's cattle?
You want to feed one?
No, Charles, don't.
You want to feed
Charles, don't.
Why?
Because it was saying things like sperm and, grew up in a small town, my grandpa had cattle. That's when I saw my birth date. And that is how I found out that I was donor conceived. I went to my mom as she was getting ready, and I said, hey Mom, I know that Doug is not my dad.
Say hi, Mama. Hi, Mama.
I lost my dad, Doug, when I was 7 years old. And at the time, she was saying, when you would understand the complexities of death, how do I tell you, but that's not your real dad because you're donor conceived? And so when I found out that I was donor conceived, I was immediately curious. It was kind of exciting, and living in a small town, this was the most exciting thing ever to happen to me, ever.
Sorry, you gonna take those toys off, sister?
I wanted to know who he is, and I quickly became frustrated because I couldn't get answers.
So this right here, that's Doug.
After more than a year of painstakingly searching, Eve finally found who she had been looking for.
Steve is his name, Donor 106. He is the most wonderful, warm, amazing person in the entire world. A relationship that's still ongoing for 14 years, to the point that my kids call him Papa. We spend holidays together. He even officiated my wedding.
But in 2018, Eve's family happiness was again disrupted when she took an at-home DNA test.
That's when I found out that he was not my biological father. You have these moments in your life where there's a before and an after. This is what that felt like. And my world stopped. Kim McMorris, the hero that was in my parents' stories, the man that was able to get them pregnant when all they wanted was a child, when they struggled with years and years of infertility. The man that delivered me was my biological father.
Dr. Kim McMorris, who was still a practicing fertility doctor until his retirement in the spring of 2021, later admitted to her in writing that he mixed his sperm with that of a donor's to inseminate Eve's mother, Marco Williams. At the time, this was entirely legal for Dr. McMorris to do in Texas and really anywhere else in the United States.
Since I had been a donor while in medical school, I spoke with one of my mentors, and he said they were having better success by mixing samples. I believe this may have been what happened in your mother's case. As far as the mixed straws at insemination, if the genetic testing confirmed, it would appear that you did inherit some of my genes. I hope all of this can be some help in confirming your roots, that I am your biological father.
I was 30 years old, and I was starting over for the 3rd time in my life. And that was a bomb that just sent ripples and ripples, and something that we are still dealing with the traumatic aftermath.
What you got?
Got pictures?
Pictures?
Yes, ma'am.
It's been a while since I've seen any of these.
Mom and Dad on their wedding day.
They're like the age your kids are.
Yeah, Dad is for sure. Yeah. There's me out of the womb. And there's my dad holding me.
I always wanted children from the time I was a little kid. I always pictured myself a mother and having children.
I had had testicular cancer that made it difficult for me to father a child. Between the two of us, we sought out Dr. Jones to help us conceive and start a family.
Would you say you trusted him?
Yes, very much so.
Cheryl and John also fell victim to their fertility doctor, Dr. Paul B. Jones of Grand Junction, Colorado. They went to him twice for help in the 1980s, and both times he allegedly used his own sperm without their consent to inseminate Cheryl. There was no law against this in Colorado at the time.
This is a photo of Tahnee being born, and you can see Dr. Jones in the photo delivering Tahnee, as well as his nurse that was attending.
Yeah, it's surreal and kind of gross.
His story to us, or to me, was that there's a lot of medical students that come down and were the donors, and that's what he said to me.
I lost all respect for him. You know, there was just no integrity, no ethics involved.
I want to know what he was thinking, because it's hard for me to think that it was anything good. There were so many other options that it didn't have to be him, and to me that speaks to the narcissism and the God complex, and I don't want that. I don't want any part of that.
I'm angry at him. I'm hurt. I want to ask him why.
To know that I came into the world like that, with him taking advantage of my mother and her desire to have a family. It's gross.
Using DNA, Maia and Tahnee have found at least 12 other half-siblings who they say were also conceived with Dr. Jones's sperm. Dr. Jones, who has neither admitted or denied the allegations against him, gave up his medical license in 2019 after his alleged offspring came forward.
It definitely messes with your head. You question your genetic identity, who you are as a person, what you thought for, in my case, 38 years of who you are and where you came from is totally changed in an instant.
People used to tease me about my nose in high school because it was so long and pointy. That's very similar to his. Very narrow. And the smile lines. He has the same smile lines.
How does that feel?
Weird. Like you don't recognize the person staring back at you.
There's not very many people that can understand what we're going through and offer the kind of emotional support that we need. Through all this, I found a whole group of people that I never would have met before. There are other people that are like in the same situation as me, and we call ourselves donor deceived.
It's horrifying to find out that your mother's fertility doctor actually was your biological father. The donor deception came in the 1970s and 80s when doctors like Dr. Kim McMorris in Texas or Dr. Paul Jones in Colorado used their own sperm to inseminate women who were their patients after telling them that he would use the sperm of a donor, usually a medical resident resembling the husband, or sometimes even the husband's sperm itself. While the patient was lying in an examination room, he would go down the hall, produce a sample, and then use that sample in a relatively short period of time to impregnate the women.
And for nearly decades, most of these cases were unheard of, and these doctors were still practicing. According to Professor Madeira, 40 to 50 doctors worldwide are believed to have done this, creating several hundreds of offspring.
In the late 1970s and 1980s, there was even less regulation than we have today. And I think you have to take a look at what culturally reproductive technology was like back then. So reproductive technology has always sort of been stigmatized. It was always done in secret. Given that secrecy and stigma, it's no wonder that there was very little regulation.
Today, it's not so stigmatized, and it's estimated that more than 12% of women between the ages of 15 and 49 have received some kind of fertility treatment.
My name is Jessica Stavena, and I was conceived via artificial insemination with a donor. My mom has always been, very honest and very candid with me my entire life.
I'm the type of person that I want her to know who she is and who her family is and who she is. And so I knew all along that if I had another child doing the artificial inseminations with anonymous donor sperm, that I would tell her the story. I would not want her growing up not knowing it.
I told my story to everybody because I just thought it was so incredible. And to me, that made me feel even more wanted by my mom.
Even in elementary school, Jessica wrote about her experience.
When I started this book, that's where I started it. Dr. McMorris started helping my mother in August 1984. From that date until June 2nd, 1986, my mother went through a lot of pain, disappointments, and travel, many miles. Her trip back to the doctor on July 12, 1986 made it all worthwhile. Dr. McMorris did a pregnancy test that showed positive, which meant she was going to have a baby. Here I come. Exactly 9 months later, on March 5th, 1987, I came into this world, and my mother was the happiest person in the world.
About 5 years ago, I started having these very drastic health issues and concerns, and I was seeing, doctor after doctor after doctor, trying to get a diagnosis to figure out what was going on. I purchased a 23andMe DNA Ancestry and Health kit last January in hopes of guiding me in some sort of direction to give me answers regarding health issues I was having. But I've known my entire life I was donor conceived, so in the back of my mind, I was like, what if I have siblings? What if I find a sister or a brother? And I had no idea what I was about to stumble upon when those results came in. When it opened, it connected me with 3 half-siblings. And so I'm like, oh my God, my husband and I are both like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. One of the half-sisters, it only had her initials on 23andMe. And then I get a new friend request come in that the name matches the initials, which was Eve Wiley. At that time, I hadn't heard her story at all. So I was just really excited that, to be able to connect with half-siblings, and I was just like, oh my God, I've always wanted this. So I immediately began to connect with Eve, and she asked me, do you know the details of your birth story? So I'm just so excited, and in my mind immediately I'm starting to type, I was donor conceived, and I'm trying to type all this out because I'm thinking, oh, she probably thinks that I don't know that I was donor conceived. She either asked me who my mother's fertility doctor was, or was my mother's fertility doctor Dr. Kim McMorris? And so I said yes, and she's like, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but he's also our biological father. I couldn't even finish reading the sentence because it didn't make sense. Like, how is that possible? I mean, he's my mom's doctor. Like, there's no way that's a thing, right? Like, that's not a thing.
At the time that most of these inseminations took place, nothing about what the doctors did was criminal, and holding them accountable today is difficult for several reasons, including statutes of limitation, destruction of evidence such as medical records, and laws regarding consent not directly matching the doctor's conduct in each case.
When he became a doctor, he took an oath
to do no harm. And I feel like he completely disregarded that 100%. And yeah, my mom's, okay, she's not hurt physically, right? But if he thought what he was doing was absolutely okay and ethical, he should have had that conversation with all of our moms. But he didn't. It's disgusting, and it's so heartbreaking that I'm a product, I share his DNA.
Why do we not have laws in place for this? But how can we have a $24 billion industry that allows for things like this to happen, and no one talks about them? And there's no punishment, there's no accountability. And so that's when I decided to go lobby for a fertility fraud bill in the state of Texas, and it passed.
It's very clear to me that it should be a violation of the law.
Thank you.
No federal law in the U.S. prohibits or punishes doctors for unconsented use of their own sperm to inseminate a patient, and only 5 states have created laws in the last couple of years to criminalize doctors who do this. In Texas, the law Eve helped pass goes as far as criminalizing fertility fraud as sexual assault and classifying the doctors as registered sex offenders.
It felt very validating to get that done. There are still bad actors, but you need to have these boundaries and these consequences to prevent people from doing this.
Holding the perpetrators of fertility fraud accountable, I think, says several things. First of all, we're not in the 70s and 80s any longer. So when we hold these doctors accountable, it affirms patients' autonomy. It affirms that doctors cannot merely replace what they want to do for the will of the patient.
So did we decide, are we gonna do the family dinner when it's my turn, just on
I
May's
think we
birthday?
should, because it's your turn to host the family dinner anyways, right?
Okay.
We had the option of feeling sorry for ourselves and doing nothing and staying hidden, or we could go public and file a lawsuit and pass laws and try and make something positive come out of this. And so that's the route we've chosen.
The Emmons family, along with other possible offspring of Dr. Paul B. Jones, have sued him for the alleged unconsented use of his sperm in many procedures that took place between 1975 and 1989. In Dr. Jones's defense, he says Cheryl had consented to being inseminated with sperm of an anonymous donor, and that's what she got.
I know he worked all night.
The toughest part is waiting for some sort of resolution. The courts move slow. We are constantly just hurry up and wait. It's kind of been the last 2 years, and you really just want answers and closures. This has turned our family upside down. We're very quiet homebodies, stick to ourselves, and here we are forced into a situation we didn't want to be put in.
There's 3 that are waiting for the claws, and here we have Leva,
Who didn't wake up?
who didn't wake up, even though it is her first Christmas.
Look at the face.
She hasn't quite got this figured out yet.
Maia and Tahnee have a younger sister, Grace. She was a miracle child, conceived without the help of artificial insemination.
The last couple years have been a little rough.
A little strange, a little weird, but I don't know, I don't know. If I had to pick a date and time, it would probably have been when I did find out that you guys were full siblings. And I don't mean that to say to make you guys feel guilty. It was just simply that was just the reality of it. It was like that day was when I go, okay, I need to process this with myself.
I definitely can understand how, like, thinking-wise, the dynamics change, and you kind of are like, okay, I'll just hang out over here.
I probably would have distanced myself for a while.
I think I put up a lot more defense mechanisms than I was willing to admit that I did. I don't think this way anymore, but it really sucks that at the beginning I wanted to be very upset because I felt very, very guilty that I was Dad's daughter. I just felt I wanted to feel so guilty for that. You guys are just my sisters and you're my best friends and you have been since day one. You helped
raise me. You helped teach me everything. Like, you guys, I have so much of who I am is Maia and Tahnee.
You guys are doing very good. By the way, could you put your arm around your sister? Here we go. That off the ball. Have another shot at that.
Who is it? Say hey, Papa. Ah. Hey, Dad. Oh, can you see us?
At the playground,
Hold on, let me turn the volume up real quick.
Wait, can we
see
go
Papa?
back to the playground?
Okay, show Hutton.
What?
Show him Hutton. Hey, Hutton. Say hi to Papa.
Hi, Papa, wherever you are.
Steve, or Donor 106, had genuinely thought he could have been Eve's father. Despite finding out that he isn't, their relationship is ongoing.
You want to go?
Hey! In our society, we have this toxic positivity. And when we hear something that is hard, we feel like we have to deflect our own discomfort. And so we say things like, it's not that bad. Well, it wasn't your real dad anyway. You wouldn't be here if it weren't for him. Oh, my personal favorite. Well, at least you have Dr. Genes. And so I think that those marginalizing comments are really hard because you don't feel seen, you don't feel heard, and then no one's acknowledging the importance of genetic identity.
And when I go to my friend.
Using DNA matches from their 23andMe genetics test, Eve and Jessica have been able to identify at least a dozen half-siblings.
I look at this photo and I think a lot of things. I'm sad that I was so dispensable, and I'm super creeped out. It's a hurtful photo because, like, I am nothing to my biological father. That hurts. It seems so cold and calculated, and it's something so foreign to who I am and how I go through life and how I experience my relationships that it's hard for me to relate to someone like that. But at what point do you become so callous to this and so calculated that this is just a normal routine? Like, how does this become normalized for him?
The BBC reached out to both Dr. Kim McMorris in Texas and Dr. Paul B. Jones in Colorado, who neither responded to our multiple requests for comment.
I feel like this circumstance bringing us together has really been the only silver lining to this entire situation.
So to be able to look at someone and see a bit of yourself, it was a unique and new experience for me that I found very settling and comforting.
Absolutely agree. That was one of the things when we first met. It was this instant connection, something I've never had before, I've never experienced before.
It's only been a year, but like I also can't imagine my life without her.